The ordinary discovery. The sky above the alien world was painted in fading colors of purple and gold. The twin suns had just set beyond the jagged mountains, and darkness was crawling into the ruins. John, a lone human explorer, stepped carefully across the broken stones. His boots crunched against the dust of a forgotten city. He had not planned to be here. His ship had taken damage during a storm in orbit, and he had been forced to land. Searching for shelter and resources, he wandered into this place, a place that looked like it had been left behind for thousands of years. The air was heavy, the silence deeper than he had ever known. The ruins were massive. Tall pillars leaned like old trees ready to fall. Broken statues stared with hollow eyes, their faces worn by time. John felt small in the middle of it all. He felt like an intruder walking through a memory. He whispered to himself, just a city of ghosts. As he moved further, his flashlight caught something strange on the ground. It was half buried under rubble, covered in ash and dirt. At first glance, it looked like a simple stick, long, weathered, and ordinary. John crouched down, brushing the dust away with his gloved hand. He frowned. Just a piece of wood, he muttered. His voice echoed faintly. But there was something odd. The stick was heavier than it should be. The surface was smooth, too smooth for something so old, and when his fingers closed around it, a shiver ran up his arm. John stood, holding it in the beam of his light. It looked useless, just an old branch. He laughed softly to himself. Well, at least it could make a walking stick, but as soon as he lifted it, the air around him seemed to change. The silence grew thicker, heavier, like the ruins themselves were holding their breath. Far away, in the shadows of broken walls, unseen eyes opened, figures shifted, moving quietly. John felt something, a prickling at the back of his neck. He turned quickly, shining his light across the ruins. But there was nothing there, only silence, only shadows. Still, the unease did not leave him. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just his imagination. The ruins were creepy. Of course they were. Anyone would feel strange in a place like this. He gripped the stick tighter, feeling oddly comforted by its weight. He decided to keep moving. His ship's emergency beacon would not last long. He needed to find parts, food, maybe even water. Yet as he walked with the stick in hand, the ground seemed to hum under his boots. The ruins seemed to stir, as if waking from a long sleep. He passed under an archway, cracked and broken. On the wall was a carving he almost missed. The image showed tall warriors kneeling, their heads bowed to a figure holding a staff. John stopped, staring at it. His hand tightened around the stick without meaning to. He looked at the carving, then at what he was holding. A chill ran through him. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "It can't be." But before he could think further, the wind shifted, carrying with it faint voices. They were too soft to understand, but he could hear them, whispers echoing across stone. His pulse quickened. He swung the flashlight around, heart pounding. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement, shadows gathering, figures stepping out into the dim light. They were tall, armored, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. John froze, fear tightening his chest. He raised the stick defensively, though he knew it would not help him. But the warriors did not attack. Instead, as the light fell fully upon them, they dropped to one knee. Their armor clinked softly as they bowed. Heads lowered, they whispered in unison, their voices blending together like a chant carried on the wind. "The Lost One returns." John's heart thundered in his chest. He took a step back, shaking his head. "No," he whispered, "you've got the wrong man." But the warriors did not rise. They stayed kneeling, their voices low, repeating the words again, "The Lost One returns." The ruins trembled softly, as if the world itself believed them. John looked at the stick in his hand once more, and for the first time, it glowed faintly. A soft golden light shimmered along its surface. He stared at it in disbelief, his breath caught in his throat. He had only picked it up as a joke, a simple piece of wood. Now it pulsed like it was alive, and before him, an army of warriors knelt as if he were their king. John whispered to himself, his voice trembling, "What have I done?" The first reaction. The night air grew colder as John stood frozen. The strange warriors remained kneeling before him, their glowing eyes lowered, Their armored heads bowed. The silence was broken only by their chant. The lost one returns. Their voices rose and fell like the sound of wind rushing through a canyon. John's heart pounded so hard that it echoed in his ears. He tightened his grip on the stick, which still glowed faintly in his hand. It was impossible, ridiculous even. He was no king, no savior, just a stranded human who had made the mistake of touching something that clearly wasn't just a stick. "Listen," he said, his voice shaking. "I think you've made a mistake. I don't know who you think I am, but I'm not him." His words fell flat in the heavy silence. The warriors did not move. They remained in their kneeling positions, breathing slowly, armor glinting under the weak starlight. Finally, one of them rose. He was taller than the others, his armor marked with strange symbols that glowed faintly like embers. A commander, John guessed. The figure lowered his weapon to the ground, bowing his head slightly. Then he spoke, his voice deep, steady, and filled with reverence. "You carry the scepter of a lost one. No false hand can lift it. No unworthy spirit can hold it. The prophecy is fulfilled." John stepped back, shaking his head. "Scepter? This? No, it's just a piece of wood." He held it out, almost waving it at the commander. "Look at it. It's nothing." But even as he said it, the glow along the stick brightened. The commander's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in certainty. "The relic recognizes you. Only the one foretold can awaken its light." John's mouth went dry. He looked at the stick again, the faint golden light pulsing gently like a heartbeat. His hands trembled. He wanted to drop it, throw it away, pretend he had never touched it. But something deep inside stopped him, something heavy and invisible pressing against his chest. More warriors rose from the shadows, stepping closer. They formed a circle around him, not threatening, but protective. John could feel their presence like walls of stone. They whispered among themselves, words he could barely understand. Yet one phrase repeated again and again. "The lost one has returned." Panic clawed at his throat. He wanted to scream that they were wrong. He wanted to run back to his ship and forget this nightmare. But his ship was broken, his supplies low, he had nowhere else to go. And now these warriors, these alien beings, looked at him with eyes full of hope, as if he were the answer to every prayer they had ever spoken. The commander raised one hand, and silence fell among the warriors. "You do not understand yet," he said, "but the time will come when you will. For now, you must come with us. The prophecy demands it, and the relic has chosen." John shook his head. No, I don't go anywhere with strangers, especially strangers who creep out of ruins in the middle of the night. You want me to believe I'm some kind of chosen one? Sorry, wrong human." The commander's expression did not change. His glowing eyes stared into John's as though reading his soul. Then he slowly lowered himself back onto one knee, bowing deeply, one by one. The other warriors followed, dropping to their knees once more. The sound of armor hitting stone echoed through the ruins like thunder. John's stomach twisted. He didn't want this. He didn't want kneeling warriors, glowing scepters, or ancient prophecies. He just wanted to go home, back to Earth, back to a life where the strangest thing he had to worry about was repairing a broken engine. But here he was, standing in ruins where the shadows whispered his name, even though he had never spoken it. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A low rumble rolled beneath their feet. Dust fell from the broken arches, and the warriors lifted their heads sharply. Their glowing eyes turned toward the horizon. Something had stirred. Something had felt the relic's awakening. The commander's voice dropped to a heavy whisper. "They know. The enemies of the lost one have felt his return." John felt ice crawl through his veins. Whoever they were, he knew it wasn't good. The commander pointed toward the mountains in the distance. "The war begins again, and you are at its center, whether you accept it or not." John's chest tightened, his throat dry. He whispered, "What have I gotten myself into?" The prophecy revealed. The ruins stood in silence again, but it was no longer the silence of emptiness. It was heavy, like the calm before a storm. John stood inside the circle of warriors, his hands tight around the glowing stick. His mind screamed that this was impossible, but every glowing eye fixed on him said otherwise. The tall commander stepped forward. His armor shimmered faintly in the starlight. His voice carried the weight of centuries. "You do not know us, human, but we have waited for you. Our ancestors carved your coming into stone. They told of a stranger, not born of our world, who would hold the relic of the lost one. They told us that when he returned, the tribes would rise, and the world would change forever." John swallowed hard, shaking his head. "No, you don't get it. I'm nobody. I didn't even mean to come here. I crashed. I was just looking for supplies, and I found this. This thing, that's all." But the commander's eyes burned with certainty. A false hand cannot lift it. A false heart cannot awaken it. You hold the relic because it chose you. John wanted to argue. He wanted to throw the glowing stick back into the dirt. But deep down, a cold truth pressed against him. He had felt the shiver when he touched it. He had seen the carvings on the wall. He had heard the whispers that no human voice could make. Another warrior, smaller but quicker, stepped forward. Her voice was softer, almost gentle. "The Lost One was our first king. He was a uniter of tribes, the bringer of peace, but he vanished. And with him went the relic. We waited for ages, tribes fell into war, and the land grew dark. But the prophecy promised he would return, not in his old body, but in another form, another spirit, another bearer." She bowed her head. "You are that bearer." John's stomach turned. The weight of their belief crushed him. He had never been a leader, never even wanted to be one. He fixed ships, he mapped stars, he explored ruins, but leading armies? That was someone else's destiny, not his. He lifted the stick, staring at its glow. "And what if I refuse? What if I drop this and walk away?" The commander's expression darkened, not in anger, but in warning. "If you abandon it, the tribes will tear themselves apart. The enemies who already stir will rise, and this world will burn. The prophecy says only the bearer of the relic can stop it. Without you, the end will come. With you, there is hope." John laughed bitterly, though his voice shook. "Hope? You're telling me your whole world is depending on a stranger who doesn't even know how this thing works? That's not hope. That's madness." But the relic pulsed in his hand, as if answering. The golden light shimmered brighter, spilling across the ruins. The carved walls lit up with patterns that had been invisible before, glowing lines that connected into images, warriors kneeling, battles fought, flames rising, and finally, a stranger standing at the center, holding the relic high. The warriors gasped. Some dropped their heads lower in reverence. Others touched their fists to their armor. The commander's voice shook as he whispered, "The prophecy reveals itself again." John stepped back, his breath quick. No, this can't be real. It's some kind of trick, some old technology, some hologram." But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't. The warmth of the relic pulsed against his skin, syncing with his heartbeat. The ruins themselves were alive, reacting to him. The smaller warrior spoke again, her voice calm but firm. "You do not have to understand yet. You only have to accept that it has begun. The enemies have already felt the relic awaken. They will come for you. They will come for all of us, but only with you can we stand against them." John's knees felt weak. He wanted to collapse, but the circle of warriors around him kept him standing. Their eyes burned with expectation, their bodies bowed with loyalty, and all he could do was whisper the thought that had been clawing inside his chest since he first picked up the stick. "I didn't choose this." The commander's reply was steady. "No, but it chose you." The test of faith. The ruins no longer felt empty. They breathed with hidden power, and John stood at the center of it, the glowing relic still warm in his grip. The warriors formed a ring around him, their armor shining in the faint golden light, but their silence pressed heavier than any battle cry. The commander stepped forward, his deep voice echoing. "The prophecy says the bearer of the relic must prove himself. The relic accepts you, but the temple must also accept you. Without the temple's blessing, the tribes will not follow." John frowned. "Temple? Blessing? No, you've got it wrong. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a king. I'm just a man who crashed here." His words trembled in the cold air, but the commander's glowing eyes did not waver. "The temple will know the truth," the commander said firmly. He turned and gestured for John to follow. The warriors shifted, opening a path among the broken stones. Their steps rang against the ruins as they moved deeper. into a place where the shadows thickened and the air grew colder. John hesitated. His instincts screamed at him to run, to escape this madness. But curiosity, that old human weakness, pulled him forward. Every step echoed with weight. He glanced at the relic in his hand, its glow pulsing softly like a living heart. They walked until the ruins opened into a vast chamber. Ancient pillars rose like the bones of giants, and at the far end stood a massive stone door. Its surface was carved with lines and spirals, glowing faintly like the veins of some sleeping creature. The smaller warrior from before stepped beside him, her voice calm. "This is the temple of the first light. It has remained sealed since the lost one vanished. Only the true bearer can open it." John stared at the door, his throat dry. "And if it doesn't open, then the tribes will know you are false," the commander said, "and you will not leave this place alive." The words cut through him like a blade. He swallowed, his hand tightening on the relic. Every instinct told him to drop it, to back away, to deny everything. But he could feel their eyes on him, dozens of glowing gazes filled with desperate hope and deadly expectation. John stepped closer to the door, his breath fog in the cold air. The carving seemed to shift under the light of the relic, patterns moving as though alive. He lifted the stick slowly, his hand shaking, and pressed it against the center of the stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Silence stretched. Warriors shifted uneasily. John's chest clenched with panic. "See? Nothing. I told you I wasn't." But then the stone shuddered. A low hum filled the chamber. The carvings flared with golden light, spirals blazing outward like fire racing through dry grass. The ground trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. Warriors dropped to one knee, gasping in awe. The door groaned, splitting down the middle. A blinding light poured out, washing over John. It wasn't just light. It was warmth. It was memory. It was the weight of 1,000 voices whispering at once. He staggered back, but the relic in his hand glowed brighter, steadying him, anchoring him. The commander's voice rang with awe. "The temple accepts him." John's heart thundered. His head swam with fragments of images. Warriors kneeling, battles fought, a crown of fire, a shadow falling across a world, and a voice that wasn't his whispering return. He gasped, stumbling to one knee. The relic burned in his grip, but he couldn't let go. The images faded slowly, leaving him trembling, sweat cold on his brow. The warriors surrounded him, their voices rising, chants filling the chamber. "The lost one returns, the lost one returns." Their words echoed like thunder rolling across mountains. John forced himself to stand, his knees weak. He wanted to scream that they were wrong, that he was not their savior. But the temple had spoken, and even he could not deny what had just happened. He turned to the commander, his voice hoarse. "What now?" The commander bowed deeply. "Now, the tribes will gather, but know this. Your return has awakened more than hope. It has awakened enemies who have waited in darkness. They march even now." John's stomach sank. The images he had seen flashed again in his mind. The shadow, the fire, the endless war. He gripped the relic tighter, its glow steady, and whispered to himself, "This is not what I wanted." But the temple had chosen, and there was no turning back. The gathering storm. The temple door closed behind them with a deep rumble, sealing its light once more. John stumbled into the cold night air, his breath uneven. The relic still glowed faintly, and every time his eyes fell on it, he wished he had never touched it. Yet the warriors followed him with silent reverence, their gazes sharp, their steps steady. Beyond the ruins stretched a wide valley. Its floor was littered with stone fragments and bones of ancient battles. Fires burned on the horizon, faint but visible. John narrowed his eyes. "What's that?" The commander stood beside him, his voice heavy. "The tribes are stirring. Word travels fast when the relic awakens. Some will come to kneel. Some will come to kill. All will come." John's stomach twisted. He wanted to shout at them, to tell them he was just a man lost on the wrong planet. But the image of the glowing temple door, the visions that had nearly broken his mind, they were still fresh. And worst of all, he could not deny what the warriors had seen with their own eyes. As they marched down into the valley, a smaller warrior moved closer. She was the same one who had spoken softly before. Her voice was low, carrying only to him. "You are afraid." John glanced at her sharply. "Of course I'm afraid. I never asked for this. I don't want armies bowing to me. I don't want enemies hunting me." She did not flinch, yet fear does not matter. The relic has chosen. The temple has answered. The storm has begun. Her words chilled him more than the night air. By dawn, they reached the edge of another ruin. This one was alive with movement. Dozens of warriors from different tribes gathered, their armor marked with different colors and patterns. Some looked at John with awe, dropping to their knees. Others glared with suspicion, hands gripping weapons tightly. The commander raised his voice. "The lost one has returned. The temple has opened. The relic shines again." A ripple ran through the crowd. Half of them knelt instantly, chanting the same words John had already grown sick of. "The lost one returns." But the other half stood firm, their voices sharp. "He is no lost one. He is a stranger, a thief, a trick." The tension burned like fire in the cold air. John's heart raced. He gripped the relic tighter, its glow answering the rising voices. He wanted to disappear, but all eyes were fixed on him. A tall warrior from the opposing group stepped forward. His armor was scarred, his voice filled with venom. "If he is truly the lost one, let him prove it in battle. Let the relic show us his strength." The crowd roared in agreement, some with cheers, others with jeers. John's stomach dropped. He turned quickly to the commander. "Battle? No, no, no. I'm not fighting anyone." The commander's expression remained calm. "This is the way of the tribes. They will not follow words alone. They will follow victory. The prophecy demands a test." John shook his head furiously. "I told you, I'm not your king. I'm not your warrior. I'm just—" But the relic pulsed again, the golden glow spreading across his arms, silencing him. The crowd gasped. Some shouted in anger, others in worship. The commander's voice was steady. "The storm is gathered. Now you must stand in it." John looked around, panic gripping him. He was surrounded by kneeling believers, glaring doubters, and enemies waiting for weakness. The valley echoed with chants and shouts, 1,000 voices crashing like waves. He felt the ground tremble beneath his boots, as if the world itself was waiting for his answer. He whispered to himself, his voice lost in the roar, "What choice do I have?" The relic pulsed again, and somewhere deep inside, a spark answered. The first battle. The valley roared with voices, half demanding blood, half crying out in worship. John stood in the middle, his chest tight, his grip on the glowing relic unsteady. The tall, scarred warrior who had challenged him stepped forward, his weapon a massive blade carved from black stone. His eyes burned with hatred. The commander's voice cut through the noise, calm but commanding. "The trial has been called. The bearer must face the challenger." John's heart nearly stopped. "Wait, what? No, I can't fight him. I don't even know how to hold a sword." But no one listened. The crowd pressed closer, forming a circle. Warriors stomped their feet, the sound echoing like thunder through the valley. The scarred warrior lifted his blade high, pointing it at John. "If he is the lost one, let the relic defend him. If he is false, let him die." John's breath came fast. He wanted to drop the relic, to run, but something deep inside kept his fingers locked around it. The glow spread brighter, golden lines swirling across the surface. The air grew heavy, humming with energy. The challenger charged, his blade swung with enough force to split stone. John stumbled back, raising the relic without thinking. The blade struck, and light exploded. A shockwave burst outward, throwing dust and sparks into the air. The crowd gasped. John stared in disbelief. The relic had blocked the strike. The scarred warrior growled, circling. His blade moved fast, striking again and again. Each time John raised the relic, and each time golden light clashed against black stone. Sparks rained, the ground trembled. John's arms ached, his muscles screamed. He had no training, no technique, only instinct and fear, but every desperate move seemed to answer with power. The relic guided him, pulling his arms in strange arcs, deflecting blows he should never have survived. The crowd grew louder, some cheering, others shouting in rage. Dust swirled around them. The challenger roared, swinging his blade with fury. He slammed it down with all his strength, aiming to crush John. At the last second, John twisted, driven by panic more than skill. He raised the relic and shouted without meaning to. A beam of golden light erupted, blasting the warrior backward. He crashed into the ground, his weapon shattering. The valley fell silent. John stood trembling, chest heaving. The relic still glowed, its light wrapping around him like a shield. He stared at the fallen challenger, unable to believe what he had done. The scarred warrior struggled to rise, but his body gave out. He dropped to one knee, his head bowed. His voice was bitter but heavy with surrender. The relic has spoken. He is no false bearer. The crowd erupted, half knelt instantly, their voices rising in chants. The lost one returns, the lost one returns. The other half, the doubters, looked shaken, fear flickering in their eyes. John's knees nearly gave way. He wanted to collapse. He wanted to scream that it wasn't him, that the relic had done everything, not him, but the crowd didn't care. To them, the prophecy had been proven in light and fire. The commander stepped forward, bowing deeply. The first battle has been fought, and the relic has chosen its champion. You are the one foretold. John's voice broke. I don't want this. The smaller warrior who had spoken gently before looked at him, her eyes steady. It doesn't matter what you want. It matters what the world needs. John's chest tightened. He looked at the relic, still pulsing like a living heart in his hand. He whispered to himself, then the world is doomed. But deep inside, beneath the fear and denial, a spark of something else stirred. Not power, not pride, but the faintest whisper of responsibility. In the storm outside, the valley grew darker. The choice of the lost one. The valley was still trembling from the echoes of the battle. Dust hung in the air. Warriors knelt in long rows, their chants rolling like thunder. John stood at the center of it all, the relic glowing softly in his hand. His body shook with exhaustion. His mind screamed for escape, but the eyes of hundreds held him trapped. The commander raised his arm, his voice deep and certain. The bearer has been tested. The relic has spoken. The lost one has returned. The chants grew louder, carrying across the valley, reaching even the mountains beyond. John's chest tightened. He wanted to shout at them, to tell them they were wrong, that he was no hero. But when he looked at the faces bowed before him, he saw something stronger than belief. He saw hope, raw and desperate. The smaller warrior stepped forward, her gaze steady on him. They will follow you now, but you must decide, will you lead them, or will you walk away? John froze. The question cut deeper than any blade. If he walked away, perhaps he could still find a way back to his ship, maybe even fix it. He could leave this world behind and forget all of this. But in his mind, he saw the temple's vision again, the fire, the shadows, the endless war, and he remembered the commander's warning. The enemies had already stirred. The scarred warrior, still kneeling despite his defeat, raised his head. His voice was low, bitter but true. If you abandon them, they will tear each other apart. The tribes will fight until nothing is left. The enemies in the dark will rise and devour everything. John felt the relic pulse in his hand, steady and alive. Its light warmed him, not as a weapon this time, but as a reminder. He whispered, "Why me?" The commander answered simply, "Because no one else could." The silence that followed was heavy. Every warrior waited, every breath held. John looked at them all, at the kneeling crowd, at the doubters who no longer dared to raise their weapons, at the faces lit by the glow of the relic. They did not see a broken explorer. They did not see a frightened human. They saw the lost one returned. His throat tightened. His mind still screamed to run. But his heart knew the truth. He could not walk away, not when so many lives would fall without him, not when the storm was already coming. John raised the relic slowly. Its light flared, washing over the valley. The warriors gasped, their voices rising again in chants. But his voice cut through them, firm though soft. "I didn't choose this," he paused, then breathed the words that sealed his fate. "But I will not run from it." The commander bowed deeply. the crowd following, waves of armor clashing against stone as they knelt lower than ever before. The chants shook the ground. The lost one returns, the lost one leads. John lowered the relic, his arms trembling. He whispered to himself, barely audible over the roar, "Maybe I was lost too, until now." Above them, dark clouds gathered. Lightning cracked across the sky. The storm was no longer far. It was here, and with it, the enemies of the prophecy moved, unseen but marching closer. John gripped the relic tighter, his fears still burning, but for the first time, it burned alongside something else, a spark of resolve, fragile but real. The choice was made, the lost one would not run. The gathering storm waited, and the world held its breath.